Good views, man.
Hello, we're good. Hey, how's it going, everybody at home? Starting off fresh, we've repurposed the Blast channel, so now we're Blast TV. We've got to build it from the ground up, get people interested and excited. And how we're going to do that is by having guests like this. Jonas Gundersen is joining me today on the Hot Seat, the show where I'm going to ask very tough questions about NiP. Jonas has already had an experience with me live on LAN, asking him very hard questions. Now it's going to be online, and we know things get way more serious online. Jonas, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a bit frightened by your intro there, but it's all right. I'm sure I'll cope.
I like to make people uncomfortable. You're always a really fun guest, so I think that's just like perfect combo for me to just let loose.
Yeah.
Uh, Jonas, I'm in a bright room. You're in a dark room. How many weeks have you spent in that dark room?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm in Denmark, right outside of Denmark, right outside of Copenhagen. I think we were one of the first countries to go in lockdown, like in the new wave.
Mhm.
So I think is this maybe our fifth week, maybe a fourth week in total lockdown, and like
Total
fifth week of
lockdown.
sort of lockdown. Yeah.
And you
So it's
guys
been
don't have Amazon Prime.
no,
Yeah.
there's something like it here, but it's Denmark, right? It works pretty well. I'd say we probably have the easiest quarantine of any country ever, right? Everything works
And
pretty good.
and things are starting to lighten up a bit, right? Like you guys are talking about ending the quarantine.
Yeah, and the idea is I think on yeah at the beginning of next week they will reopen society slowly.
Hmm.
Primarily, the daycare is open on Wednesday, which is what I care a lot about, having two
Nice.
demons running around at home. So maybe I'll
Yeah.
get some actual work done for Wednesday,
Yeah.
you know?
Your kids are gonna be they're gonna grow up feeling loved with the amount of time that you spent with them during this quarantine.
Sure, up to a point, and then the graph turns, and then it's more like, get the fuck out. Oh, I
True.
swear. I'm sorry. Oh shit.
Yeah, you spent a good amount of time. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think yeah, it's different in a lot of different places, and that makes things weird for both like yourself and then you in your work situation. What's your work situation like? A lot of online conferences. You guys
Yeah,
using
pretty
Zoom?
much. Yeah, we had to. We're a Hangouts company, right? Because we
A
use
hangout
G
company. Yeah.
Suite, but a lot of Hangouts. I think some of it was distributed already because I live in Denmark, right? So I
Mhm.
usually travel back and forth to Stockholm. But I guess a lot of the other guys were in Stockholm all the time, so we had to transform a bit into the remote culture. But again, we have teams and players distributed pretty much all over the world, so it's not that alien to us. I think most esports companies and teams can probably relate. It shouldn't be that big of a problem to go online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think my wife tells me that I spend maybe, I don't know, six to 8 hours a day on calls, weird calls and talks with
Yeah.
people on Hangouts, right?
Yeah.
That's most of it.
A bit more fun in person, but obviously still kind of sucks to just be on calls all day long in the first place, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, so obviously you're a player, you used to be known as Calc. Was that short for calculator? Because we were good at math?
That's good. That's a clever Launders. That's fun. Uh, I didn't hear that one before. I think originally it was Calker, like ER on the end. And I have no idea how I came up with it. And then one day I just
Really?
decided to shorten it. Yeah. Also, I
Oh,
think the real one was Calker, and it had like lowercase c, maybe capital A, and some funky combinations.
yeah.
I can't even remember. I should bring that
You
back.
couldn't uppercase the first letter of 1.6. It had to be like the third letter or
Yeah.
something like that. That's the thing. Do you have a number in
So
there or no? Ever have a number in
I
there?
never had a. It was, I think back then when you had numbers with dot MP3 on
Yeah.
playing public, right? So you were like,
Yeah.
I'm playing music. That's why I suck, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
You
it's like,
know, you can still play 1.6. Do you ever go back and open up 1.6?
no, I actually didn't know that, which I probably should, considering I work in esports. But no, I didn't know that. I haven't
Yeah.
played that for years. I should do that. I'm
Yeah.
I'm on a very serious mission on the road to global in CSGO now, right? I'm
Really?
Supreme Master on 380 hours. So
Supreme at 380. That's actually really good. You're off to a flying start. Yeah. Any
yeah.
regrets about going into the business side?
No, 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 no.
No.
I think it's been great.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't know. I guess I'm supposedly in charge of the team now. I might sub myself in if I get to global, because I think
Yeah.
I have what it takes.
So I always wonder, like, as you get older, you start to learn things that you're like, man, I wish when I was a player I had this mentality. Do you ever like you're playing and you're like, man, I'm like really smart about this one thing, and if I was if I was smart about that one thing when I was younger, I'd probably be a nutty pro. Do you ever think about that stuff that you've learned now, getting
You know
older?
what? Honestly, I literally had a talk earlier today. I talked a bit with Plopsky, and I actually used this particular argument, saying that, you
Okay.
know what? When I look back and think about all the time I wasted on not trying hard enough, it's so
Mm,
stupid, man. And if you just had the work ethic and the understanding to actually analyze your game instead of just, obviously he's much better than I ever was at that time, right? And he already does it already, but it's just yeah, so much wasted potential in our youth. But maybe that's the thing that everybody gets to at one point.
yeah, I think when you look back, you can always find holes in what happened if you're not, I guess, the simple.
Yeah,
You're not the simple at the
yeah,
time. There's always something more you could do. You could have had you could have
yeah,
exercised more. You could have read more books. There's all kinds of things. So
yeah,
if we run it back to like at the time, like it's kind of an interesting parallel because and we'll talk about this in a second, but you guys are picking up a Paladins team to play as your new Valorant Pro team, and
yeah.
there's the argument about not knowing how good they'll be, but I think the one thing you guys probably believe in is the fact that they were like champions of another game. And now you also had your fair share of success when you were growing up. So just to run it back to the beginning a little bit, do you feel like that same confidence in your Paladins team? Because when you played, you could kind of draw some parallels just between what it meant to be like a good player on LAN or a champion or somebody who could win tournaments, more so than how good they were at any one specific game.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. That it's like when you get a new game, right? The skill set, like you make an educated guess. And from when I played it, from when I saw it, from the I don't know the one day I tried playing it, it was pretty evident to me that it's like I'm sure we'll get much more into this how it plays, right? But it's like a I don't know Counterstrike hybrid of some sort, right? But there's
Hmm.
definitely MOBA elements into it. I know they're sort of reinventing some of the Counterstrike stuff in there. And what I look at in a game like that is like first how epic is the raw skill level, right? What's the real need there? Always really hard to say in the beginning, right? And then
Hmm.
there's learning the actual game. So I think having people that knows how to compete is pretty unique. Also, that we had the chance to, that we have the history with the Paladins teams. These are a synergetic group of really good guys that knows how to compete. They've been on land. They know how to win tournaments. And at the same time, the mission, for the next 3 to 6 months in Valorant is probably not going to be to break the what's called the skill barrier or the competitive barrier in esports. They're going to be figuring out how to play this stuff,
Hmm.
stay with the meta, stay with the development that Riot's going to do, and then develop yourself into a really good team and really good players. Because
Hmm.
it's impossible for any team, I think, to know right now how it's going to look in 6 months and what the best player is going to be like there. So I think I was really comfortable in investing in people that knew each other, that are
Hmm.
strong learners, super eager to. Your question was like the winning. That's part of it. Of course, they know how to win, but I think they're also super eager to learn and become better at something and figuring shit out. And I think
Hmm.
that's incredibly important. So it's just a really good core and a really good group of people to build from, right? And they're great gamers. They have CS backgrounds, a lot of them also, right? So it's
Yeah,
yeah,
Swedish
I
after
think it's
all,
a good
but
mix.
partly.
Yeah.
Did you have like a multi-game background as well? Did you just play CS when you were younger?
I've played it all, honestly.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember I talked a lot with Hisham about that when I joined. There's like, yeah, I played a lot of 1.6, but in the early days when the first Dota came out, I played that to pieces, like the first Dota.
Mm.
And then I actually think, looking back at all my games, I've probably played more MOBA than I've played FPS.
Oh yeah.
One of my best friends, actually, SPX, for those that remember, he also used to play Counter Strike. He used to say that he thinks that my skill ceiling was potentially higher in MOBA games than it was in FPS because it suits me better as a player, actually. But I never got to prove that. It's easy for me to say, right? You know what? I could have been a pro at League of Legends, but
Yeah.
but no, I've played so much. I've played incredible amounts. Wait, my computer
Went a little dark
here.
there.
Yeah, it's okay. I was waiting for PC my no,
Okay,
so
this is
I played a lot. I played thousands of hours of Dota, the first one. I played thousands of hours of Heroes of Newer, thousands of hours.
thousands,
Yeah, I did.
thousands.
Yeah, I'm 37.
Oh
and
my
I didn't
God,
do
yeah.
anything. I also skipped
Gotta be
school. Right?
millions.
I quit school when I was 17, right? 16, 17, 18. Yeah, I didn't
Oh
go
yeah.
to high school. Yeah, so just play
Oh really?
computer games, man. Yeah.
Did you then how did you go into business? No background in school. You have a bunch of years of startup experience. Take us through
Yeah.
that a little bit from playing a lot of games when you're younger into like how do you go into the business side and like what did your next 5 to 10 years look like after
Uh,
dropping out?
that's a fun question, right? So, I when everybody went to high school, I played video games for a long time. I played music also. I'm a musician, right? So I played a lot of that, and then I played a lot of Counterstrike in that period when everybody went to high school. And then when did I quit? Everybody went to school. I traveled the world in like 2003, 2005 ish is where we played the most, I think. And then after that, I had a very short time at a real job. I got a real job. Figured this esports thing was not going to happen back then,
Mhm.
and then the poker boom happened. So I spent 6 months in a real job, and all my old gaming buddies said, "You got to go to poker, man." And then I quit my job, and my parents were thrilled, obviously, that I was never going to do the real life stuff.
Yeah.
And then I spent 5 years as a professional poker player, actually.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
So you're just like had your laptop out sitting on your bed playing like 4 tables at once online. Like what'd your poker life look like?
yeah, pretty much, right? I played cash, no limit hold'em cash games for those that know, right? Up to $1K table stakes, right? And that was
Yeah.
I don't know, or maybe 4 tables, 6 tables at once, something like that. And
Yeah.
then for the past 2 years, like 3 years, I did the grind pretty hard. In the last 2 years, I spent poker coaching, so
Mm.
younger players, up and coming players, do on theory and all that stuff. I had a long talk with Victor from Liquid about poker back then. It's
Mm.
funny actually, right? Because the Liquid, their poker forums was the first, right? Way back, so way
Mm.
before gaming, and they had the whole history in StarCraft and poker. There's a pretty rich history there in gaming,
Yeah.
and Liquid, right? So I was on the Liquid
What
forums for a long time.
what's the deal with Counter-Strike players and playing poker? There's so much
Yeah,
Shagwire, obviously. Was it Final
yeah,
Table WSOP?
yeah. That's I
Yeah.
didn't make it that far, but
Yeah.
I just think it's a natural thing, from what I saw, because I actually sort of transitioned into it. There was obviously a huge StarCraft crowd in the early days. That was the true esport, you could say, in Korea. I also played World Cyber Games in 2003 in Korea, right, where StarCraft was pretty huge, and there was just a huge following there that when esports wasn't really happening, an online game that came up was poker all of a sudden. It was real money, and you could apply. There's tons of of the learning mechanics and the way to crunch, if you will, right, and really get going with something that I think that was really appealing to a lot of gamers. So all of a
Mm.
sudden, all the gamers just moved into poker.
Yeah.
So it was like it was almost because back then there was no salaries in gaming, so it was like gaming, but you could make money if you were good at it. That was
Do you
new.
think yeah. Did your computer gaming skills help you be a better poker player?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's what's it called? It's a problem solving mindset. I think, right, that I think a lot of good gamers have, that they generally try really hard to. I call it crunching, right? But I think a lot of us are really addicted to problem solving, which I'm sure you can relate to. That we like,
Mhm.
like we like complex things, and poker is like that. It's just
The
constantly
risk
solving an
analysis.
equation, constantly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like okay, it's 70-30. Gotta go, boom, you get the result instant. Go back, hand review. Oh, okay, should have done differently on the turn.
Mm.
There's something appealing about it, which is the same in games, right? Especially in MOBA, I think it's really, to grind something huge fight, like okay, gotta do something or we're fucked in 2 minutes, right? So it's
Yeah.
um, yeah, absolutely. I think that helped a lot, and also I think the love for the grind, that's really important. The
Mm.
understanding of it takes hours and hours and hours of playing and grinding and doing stuff before you get good, instead of the lucky punch style.
What's more unhealthy? Being a pro Counter-Strike player or being a pro poker player?
Uh,
And not today. Today, if you're a pro Counter-Strike player, the health coach, the psychologist in the gym, and
yeah,
the pressure on
yeah,
the
these
fans to
guys.
look good. But back then, what was more unhealthy?
Well, it's a pretty simple one, right? Because you could make money off of one and you couldn't off of the other one,
Oh,
right?
true.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty unhealthy being
Mental health while
Counter-Strike.
playing Counter-Strike is way down. not making
But I
any
think
money.
way back when we did it, right? It was the net cafes. I think we knew some of the guys that owned the only net cafes in Copenhagen, man. And the amount of times I've spent sleeping on the floor in net cafes because we were just playing, man, 14 hours a day. Which is the performance model is changing slightly because of that, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a different one now. Just pizzas and playing 14 hours a day, pretty much. That's those were the days. Different times.
Yeah, definitely. Computer internet cafe culture is a really interesting one. There's all kinds of stories. So you play Dota, you must know like Sumail, selling his bike
Yeah.
to get money to play at
Yeah.
internet cafes, then wins the international. There's an internet cafe owner that paid me in Snickers bars to help fix people's PCs.
There you
And
go.
I had a very rudimentary understanding of how to fix PCs. I would just basically format every PC that had an issue. Get a
It's
Snickers bar
good.
out. But yeah, playing game all night passes like $10 play all nights or whatever. That's kind of how it all began. It's interesting, humble beginnings, humble beginnings. So then where do you go from after the poker stint? You did CS and then you did poker and then you went into went into non-esports startups. Is that right?
Yeah, so I did poker, and then I decided once again that poker, so poker compared to esports or gaming, right, is a bit lonely, which is what hit me in the end, right? That it's uh, all the adventures I've had with gaming is some of the most fun I've ever tried, right? I also have a very competitive nature, right? So it was insane adventures. Like some of the people I met in 1.6 are some of my best friends today. SPX, as I say, is one of my best friends, and I know a lot of the guys still, right? And that's pretty amazing. Also traveling around the world, like the guys are doing now, it's a pretty spectacular thing. So and then also the competition part, which is amazing, right? And then when you go into poker, it's like there's elements of it that's really fun, but it's a lot of alone. You're against, it's yourself all the time. And then I think what I didn't like about it also was I could have kept on going. It was going fine, right? I was making money. I could have made a killing probably if I kept going. But I also didn't like the fact that the only sort of metric for success is like money. That's the only thing, right? The more successful you are, the more money you get, which is sure I get that about life in general, but in this it's just very outspoken that that's your only metric, right? It's like it's a dollar amount. I found that to be incredibly hard actually in the end. That you're alone and it's only about money. That wasn't very appealing to me, so I ended up quitting, even though it was going well. And then I got back into sales. Like the first job I ever had was like I got handhunted into a sales job because I'm apparently an outgoing person. So
A
somebody
salesman,
thought I would be good at
people
that.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, people guy,
Yeah.
something like that. And then I went back into sales.
What kind of sales are we talking about here? Were you spinning signs on the sidewalk trying to get people to hop into the real estate office and buy a house, or were you cold calling people, telemarketing, trying to sell vacations to Florida, or what kind of sales?
Somewhere in between, I guess. But it was I was the first sales job I had was very cold calling, but it's like cell phones. You sell a cell phone company, but it was an aggressive format where you would literally stand in a mall where we had like a shop in the middle of the mall, but you had to pull people in. So I had to go and like, hey, how about a subscription? It's gonna change your
Yeah.
life.
That's good change your life. You're selling the dream, right? So you land on a cloud. Yeah.
So yeah, something like that. And then same thing. And then I actually went back into the three. They're called like a company and European company, right? I did that again. So it's like phone subscription phones, which was the first one. And then right after that, again, it was a good trajectory, a good salary. It was fine, and people wanted me to be a team leader, etc., because I was doing well. And then one of my friends came and pitched me a startup. He's like, dude, skip this stable salary. You're gonna come sell in this startup. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's again fuck
That's
up
it.
the career
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was like a recruitment platform. So you would
Okay.
sell. They had made a recruitment platform for universities, so that companies could recruit on the universities. I thought, okay, I know a lot about universities, because I dropped out of school at 16. So great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm right in the target market here. I know all about it.
Yeah. Is that intimidating since you hadn't gone to university yourself?
No, but yeah, you've known me briefly in my life, but I don't really function that way. I don't get to think that far before it sort of happens. It's like,
Okay.
yeah, sure, let's
A
try it.
little impulsive. Yeah,
Probably,
give it. I can relate
yeah,
to
it's
that,
probably
man.
good. Kind of like the attitude. I think it's probably gonna work. It feels right. Some good people. I could
Yeah.
probably figure it out.
Nice.
So yeah, so we did, and are you getting the whole career story here? I'll try to be brief. But it was
Yeah.
like I came in as the first guy. There were 5 founders. Then we went in, killed it pretty much for 2 years. Went from like 7 people to 40 people in the company, scaled into multiple countries, and it went really well. So that was that, and then I jumped into my own company right after that. I started my own startup.
Mm,
Um, Moved to San Francisco for a while, raised some
nice.
funding, made all the mistakes you're supposed to, busted completely. There we go. Numb again. There we go.
Jonas after dark.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. Went to San Francisco, raised some money, made all the mistakes, busted the company completely, made a lot of mistakes, but learned a lot. Um, that was 2 years of that. Then did 3 years in another startup. Found two guys that had made like a platform for nurseries and daycares that
Hmm.
needed like a commercial lead. I was like, okay, fine. And we took that company 3.5 years from 3 people to like 40 again.
Hmm.
Scaled pretty big into multiple markets. And at the end of that, I started doing a lot of consulting for startup companies. You know, how to commercialize, how to, I don't know, build stuff, how to
Yeah.
scale, how to recruit,
And
how to get
And
all
all of
sorts
your
of stuff.
experience is kind of like boots on the ground experience where you got to try it yourself and
Yeah.
then learn for yourself, which is cool. Worth its weight in gold. I think what's interesting for people watching is that, and myself, is that to see someone go from an esports career to a real life career to bat and then come
Sure.
back in a real life way in the sense that
Yeah.
you're the CEO. No, I think is a kind of an interesting path to take. And I think a lot of people end up somewhere along those lines, roots in esports, but didn't really think it would work because they're smart people. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of hope for that kind of path. A couple people stuck around the whole way through and toughed it out, and it worked out. But it made
Yeah.
sense both ways, following your passion 100% and
Sure.
kind of understanding that you might need a backup plan. And so it's cool to see how you can kind of go from that. And also, it might be interesting for people who maybe don't think of school as they're the first option that comes to mind. How could you kind of go through that path without that experience? And just to kind of put a pin in that, do you have any uh, do you have any do you have any advice for the attitude that you would take or that you would recommend for people who are trying to approach that kind of lifestyle? Like, how do you follow your opportunities? When do you know you have one? And if you're gonna brave it out in some sense, like take a big risk,
Sure.
like when is it a risk and when is it foolish?
That's a super good question, right? It's I've become like a bit of the poster child in parts of industries in Denmark talking about this, how you can make it without going to school, right? So
Mm,
sometimes I go and speak to younger kids about this stuff. But I think what I usually say is I wouldn't recommend it necessarily because it's hard, right? You're going to put a lot of stress on yourself not going to high school, for example. I think if I had gone to high school and just, I don't know, stuck it out a bit, right? Just for 3 years, I'm sure I could have pulled off high school, but I just didn't.
hopefully.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it, and I think that's number one. I think stay in high school. I think that's a good one. You will learn a lot about yourself in it instead of just jumping straight into it. But outside of that, I'm also a big believer in the fact that what's it called, the concept of education and the system of education, I think is changing pretty rapidly, and I think the education system is going to look pretty different 15 years from now.
Mm,
I think in many ways we're really slow at adapting to new kinds of learning, and people are learning at a lot faster pace nowadays than they used to, and on a
mhm,
lot broader level, right? So I think in many ways stick in high school, but at the same time you shouldn't be that afraid nowadays to just test out stuff, because obviously depending, I was lucky also, I'll say to everybody looking, right, I'm from Denmark. Like it's probably the safest place ever to make stupid choices, right? Because the
mm,
security net here is insane, right? You probably can't fail ever.
mm,
So it obviously depends on your situation and everything like that. But Denmark picks you up pretty well for it. But with that said, calculated risk, following passions, and then as I always say, the same with gamers, right? But do it. Like, you got to do it fully, right?
Mm,
Don't just test the waters a bit and saying, I'm going to do this, and then you do it half-assed. That's a poor attitude, first of all, and it's
yeah.
not going to get you anywhere. And second of all, you're probably not going to get anything out of it, right? But if you try it, whatever it is, I don't care if it's playing some sort of special flute or I don't know, baking bread in an insane
Yeah.
way. Whatever crazy idea you have, just go for it. Try it out,
Yeah.
but do it fully. And then, then just be realistic about it. You obviously have to live somehow, but I think I don't think people should be that scared of trying stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of that same camp. I see life in a very similar way, which is interesting. And on that topic of being impulsive, I think we have the intro video, or sorry, the announcement video for your Valorant team, a team that you picked
Sure.
up very recently. And this is a roster of players who came from a game called Paladins, which for I think a lot of us was a game that was kind of based off of Overwatch. That
Yeah.
was like very much inspired by Overwatch in a big
Yeah.
way. Not a massive game in terms of how many people played it, or I think the prize pools were pretty good because of high res, but yeah, in terms of like how competitive it was, not a lot. What I'm trying to say is not a lot of people know about this Paladins lineup. What would you tell the people about this Paladins lineup to help them get familiarized with why you pick them up to play Valorant?
Yeah, it's a combination. I think we touched a bit on it earlier also, but
Mm,
they're like, first of all, there's some really good guys, right? They're incredibly nice, good streamers, interesting to watch, puts out good content, great, what's called educators and speakers, all that stuff. That's really
mm,
nice. But they're skilled gamers. They're fundamentally skilled gamers, which is what I really like. And then I think that when you get to watch them and follow the progression, obviously, Bird, one of the players, but he shifted into the head coach role instead, right? So we're looking for another player. But outside of that, when we find that player, you're also going to get to watch a team transition into something, but a team that exists already in a dynamic and can figure it out together. So instead of watching completely new stuff, I think you're also going to get into, which I was sold pretty much into, because the quick story on the Paladins thing is that I joined 1st of January in NiP, and that was literally one of the first things I was part of doing was quitting Paladins. I was like, "Hi, see ya." The game is
mm.
going down, right? And they're really nice guys. So that was super sad. But even in that short time that I got to know them, like, hey, these guys are really cool. They're really nice. They're winners, and they take this stuff really seriously.
Yeah.
So I think people will see that pretty fast. Also, that these guys, they're in it. They're going for it. They're
So how
100% going for it.
everybody is scrambling for an opportunity to become a Valorant pro. How did they catch your attention? Did they come back and say, "Hey, we played the first day of beta. We think we're going to be nuts. You guys should pick us up"?
Yeah, they write hey Launders with a very thorough application. They can send
Yeah.
it to you and you can screen it all.
Yeah,
No,
I'm down.
I that's a good question, right? I think I actually don't have an answer for that. I think yeah, that's a good question, actually, especially in the early days, right?
Yeah.
I think there's probably a 0% chance that it's someone, the first player we picked, that is not someone that is entirely picked by the players, because they know the ecosystem of people that maybe came late into CS, or
Mhm.
have been really good at Apex or really good at Overwatch. They know each other, these kind of guys.
Mhm.
So I usually have a lot to say in this stuff, right? But I think in this particular one, I'm probably just gonna say yes,
Okay.
because they're gonna find him himself, right? So I think I'm the worst one to actually write in this one.
It's a weird time because, like, on the one hand, I wanna ask about just kind of the absurdity of the ecosystem at the moment where not only can you, like, buy skins in games that aren't released or, like, buy keys for games that are in alpha, but now you're
Sure.
picking up pro teams in games that have no competitions,
Yeah.
that are in beta, but it is the state of the game. Can you explain to people why it is that you want to be early in this race if you're an organization and eventually you're probably going to pick it up, you pick up a team, why it is that everybody is picking up these teams so early into beta? I mean, now this is the earliest I think I've seen pickups come out in beta with no tournaments, no even esports announced.
We're just PR horse. We want to have the PR of being the first. It's like,
Yeah.
no, Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, I think people need to stretch their imagination of the concept of a pro, right? What does it mean to be a pro? If that only means that you get money for playing a game, I think that's what we're doing here at the moment, right? We're not kidding ourselves saying like, oh yeah, we're going to compete, we're going to win the world championship tomorrow, because no one knows how it looks, right? It's more like saying we're committing to this. And I mean, as an esports team, I'm sure most people get this at this point. There's content, right? There's media minutes, there's content, there's stuff that we want to put out, and we want to engage fans. And the way I looked at it was just that Valorant has Riot behind them. The team behind it is really cool. Like the guys that sit with it, they have a lot of really good ideas. Obviously, Valorant is really hyped. Once again, it's Riot, right? They've done something right with League. So when they're coming in hot here, I think that's super interesting. That makes it more possible, I think, to go in early. And then obviously we talk with some of the other teams, some of the plans of Riot. Look at our own portfolio. What do we think fits in, right? NiP is a historic, very big FPS organization. So I think there's a lot of room there also for some of our fans and new fans. And then I think more than anything, I think it covers an interesting space. Like just to touch on the whole, is it going to kill Counterstrike thing? It's definitely not going to do that, but it also doesn't need to, because there's a large crowd of players out there that could enjoy both. And I think that the casual appeal for some people, for some players, is going to be the Valorant instead of Counter-Strike, right? So there's a lot of room for it. I think a lot of room for it. It's an interesting game to watch still, right? Where Rainbow Six has gone in a different direction. Clearly, there's a lot of FPS fans. So I think it's, yeah, there's just a lot of things going for it. I think that it's interesting. They go for this anime kind of style, and yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of it's this Frankenstein mashup of Apex, Rainbow Six, Counter-Strike, Overwatch.
Yeah.
Like it's not just one game. I mean, there's like so many kind of elements. So it's a catch-all for some people, a turn-off for some others, but it's a great game if you try it. Really fun to play. But just again, I got this comment from your announcer that I thought was really funny, and I think just echoes the sentiment of a lot of people right now. The game is in beta, and people are going pro in quotes. Absolute cringe fest. Yeah, people announcing that they're pros. To talk about this in a more general sense, for the players themselves, I mean, some people are coming into this expecting to be pro, or have proven that they can go pro in multiple game titles already. For example, Swag and AZK was pro in Overwatch on Team Liquid, as well as pro in Counter-Strike. So you could say maybe, there's hope here that he is probably going to be just as good as a game that's similar to these other games in a new title. For the commitment side of things for you guys, what I think is what I would be most curious about is some stuff about contracts. I don't know what you can say, but in terms of contract lengths and commitment to the team, is there an understanding between you and the players that, like, because there's so much that's yet to be known, are the contracts long in the first place, right out the gate? The salary's high. Like what is the understanding between you and the players that you signed? Because they must know there's just as much uncertainty for you as there is for you when you look at them.
Yeah, no, we paid them free computers for Aces, right? And then they just play.
Yeah, let the sponsors handle it. Yeah,
Aces, ROG, the best thing ever. No, but yeah, I obviously can't go into too much detail, but I also don't think it's rocket science, right? It's obviously tiered up as to the development of the game, right? It's a new game. It's probably not Counter-Strike salaries, right? To be fair, nothing is.
We do well. We do well.
Yeah. And so it's a different one, and I think you see it as if we're watching the game develop together, and we want to pick up some people where we commit to each other and see what happens together, right? So there's an element of trust, but also an element of who knows if it crashes in 6 months. I don't think so, but obviously that's what's reflected in all of it, right? But I think it's just built up in a way so that we can scale into it together properly, where everybody, everybody has a reasonable enough. The wrong words I'm using here, but everyone's winning kind of thing, right? Obviously, we look at it from a commercial side and a monetization side, so it just has to make sense all the way around. I think that's the most important part.
You have a player named Bird who is now the coach, who was a play. I mean, he was active player on the roster for the Paladins. He's coaching Valorant.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
I jokingly made a video the other day with Travis Gafford from Yahoo Esports, or from League of Legends interviewer. The video is called, coaching player in Valorant, as somebody who had never played it yet. Even that was a joke. This is, memes are real now. Okay, you can coach a game that no one's even been pro in at this point. First of all, what's have you talked about his role at all? Like, how did that happen? And like, why isn't he playing? Why isn't he playing in the first place if he was playing in Paladins?
Sure, we've talked about it a lot. And the best part about this stuff is I love communities, right? They're just like, if you put the word coach on someone, there's immediately like their opinion on what it means to be a coach. Like, oh, you can't coach. And again, that's not there yet. But who knows what it means, right? It's the same. It's almost the same as the buzzword of the century is like a sports psychologist, right? Everybody uses sports psychologist as it, and there's like 5 million different ways of doing sports psychology, right? But a sports psychologist, that's the thing, right? It's the same thing with the coach. I think it's a very different role. I think what Bird and me talked about is just that Bird was more interested in that part, right, the coaching part. And you got to see when an organization comes in, and the way I believe in our performance setup, at least, is I like to have a head coach that's not part of the players, that I can talk with, that we can look at the game together. But in the beginning, his role is to learn the meta just as much as the other guys, right? So we all play, they all play, and make sure that it's that. But his powers and skills were definitely on the analytical side of Paladins also. And he's just going to get to apply that a lot more in this game, right? And no matter what, I do need people that are not the players to actually help run this Valorant thing to make it a real success, right? So I'm sure there's other stuff you can do than coach and sit and watch four days of demos in a beta and say, hey, I figured it out, guys. I got it. This is how we're going to win. So I think it's more like, I think that if you're serious about something, it's like investing in something to say, hey, let's get someone from the outside that can maybe look a bit at some of the dynamics and has more of a full-time job in actually analyzing the game, while some of the other guys have a job of actually mechanically learning the game.
Would it be weird to put a bow on this part of the conversation? Would it be weird to expect that a lot of people who are picking up players now, because of because there's so much to be known about who's going to be really good at the game, would it be weird to expect roster changes in the next few months, even on some of these teams? On your team, is that an open conversation that you've had, or did you say, like, we're committed to get to you guys to see you improve? Or because how could you know how good they'll be at Valorant?
That's a good point. No one can, right? And I think it comes down to the organization. I've been pretty vocal about how we see NiP as an esports organization 2020 going forward, right? That we're a top tier organization, and we want to get back to that spot. And that's not different in Valorant. That we're gonna go there because we want to be the best team in the world in Valorant, whatever that means at this point, right? So if we're unable to compete with what we have, of course something will happen, and everybody knows that, right? That's also the idea. If you come and play for NiP, we're not necessarily a content creation studio, right? We're trying to go with this as an esports and with the skill first. So I don't know, expected roster change. That's always hard to say, right? But obviously things are going to shuffle around a lot as they do in early stages of this stuff, right? And then it's about finding out who stakes. A bit back to, you have a good core of people here that you can build around, right? And then you'll see. I fully believe and fully hope that all of them have what it takes to go all the way. But obviously it's always the tough judgment call on it, and also there's a bit of time, I'd say, right? We'll see. But obviously we're not in Valorant to be top 20 in the world. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Top one, don't want to be the best content creators, right?
Exactly.
Hey, listen, you just got to keep your eyes peeled, Jonas. There's always going to be a 14-year-old kid drenched in G Fuel in his F1 race car, peeking around corners, destroying everybody. You want that guy in your roster, okay?
Exactly.
You don't want to be competing against him. So gotta keep
but I already signed 4 scouts, 4 Valorant scouts to the organization also, So it's
you signed scouts to look out for more players. No. Is it who is doing the scouting? Is it just whoever just trying to watch as many Valorant streams as you can, or I guess?
As I say, it's very new, this stuff. say, I think what it's about at the moment is the players come together and find one that they think is a skill that we can agree on, all of us, and say, then we're going to try it out, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, who knows what's coming? Maybe Riot will give me all the data.
Yeah.
Right? Riot, are you listening?
Of course they'll help you out, and they want nothing more than to become the #1 esport in the world. So I'm sure they'll help you out. There is also one more difficult conversation to have with all games FPS, because we know that cheating and FPS go hand in hand, no matter what title that you're playing in. In Valorant, who knows how fast these spin botters can spin? But we have a clip already released on Twitter on day 2 of the closed beta. We've got somebody trigger botting in Valorant. This is from
maybe he's just got really good awareness.
Yeah, maybe it's the G Fuel. You never know. But I think
there he is.
Yeah, in day 2 of the beta already, this guy is acing without seeing people. So it's a difficult situation. I think this is from the alternate POV. I guess it's from Fantasy for the Win. So, pretty renowned FPS player. He had this happen in his game. But this is inevitable, right? No one thought, I mean, just like teams are being picked up in day 2 of the beta, cheats are being made day 1, day 2 as well. I guess it could have been expected. This is another beast of games. What are your thoughts on just have Riot talked about their ability to deal with cheating, and does that instill confidence in you? Is that something you feel like could actually kill a game? I mean, we live with it as it's kind of like this mole that we're trying to get rid of in Counterstrike, but we live with it now. We know it's there. We don't like how it looks, but we can't get rid of it. And then, but is there actual danger of it?
Global,
trying to get to global. Is there any actual danger of it killing the game? I mean, this is a big deal, right? Cheating.
From what I know, right, from what we've heard, they care deeply about stuff, right? They invest so much into the anti-cheat, and it's probably impossible to kill it. There will always be people trying to cheat, but they invest a lot in it. I don't think anything can kill it. Obviously, if it gets cheater infected right away, that's going to be a problem. But I also know that they're not going to let that happen, right? Because sure, it could be killed in a way in the momentum traction that people don't want to play it. If there's cheaters all over, like I wouldn't want to play it. But I'm pretty confident that Riot's going to solve that if it becomes a problem. I hadn't seen that clip. That's pretty insane.
It's new, it's fresh. It's unreal. Like, it was rumors, obviously, day 1 that like cheats are being made, but now it's like, oh, I can't believe it. In day 2, like these guys are fast. It's so nuts. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. I never thought I'd see this day. You played a little bit of Valorant yourself. What's your general opinion? I think we kind of share the same sentiment. It's super fun. Not the CS killer that I think people expect, in the sense that it's a great game, but just another great game. For people who haven't sat in Summit stream long enough to get a key for themselves so that they could try it, what does that mean? Because from the outside, everyone's only said terribly positive things about the game. What is the difference between a great game and a great game that is a CS killer? So that's an easy question to answer. Like, what is it? What is it about Valorant that allows it to be a great game but not quite a CS killer?
It's different, I think. First of all, right? But it's different, right? It's got an entirely different atmosphere around it, which I'm sure we've seen. Like, it's like this anime style. They're going a bit League on it, right? And that's the good old Dota versus League kind of thing, right? I don't think the realism players, Rainbow Six and Counter-Strike players, would be like, yeah, let's play cartoons. That's how a lot of those people are gonna feel. So I don't think that's it, right? The dynamics of it, I think what makes a great game, I think something that Counter-Strike has obviously mastered over the years, is the mechanics of it. It's a formidable game to play, but getting right into Valorant, and they've spent a lot of years on this also, you feel it, right? You've played it also. It plays great. It really does, right? It's super smooth. You can make headshots, at least I can, because I'm awesome, right? But it feels good. I think there's recoil control. It makes sense what the weapons are doing. The movements of the characters, even though they have also the weird abilities that I don't understand, right? But at the same, it just feels good. It feels like a good shooter with a lot of funky stuff going on. And I think at the core of it, whatever the top you put on the stuff you put on top, whatever hero abilities and all that stuff, and what kind of weapons. It still comes down to how it plays, how it feels, right? How's the aim? How does the bullet come out of the gun? Does it feel like they go instant? And as we talked about, you played it. It feels good. It feels really good.
Yeah, it feels right.
There's a lot of Counterstrike elements into there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people I talked to Plopsky earlier about it, right? He said it's like Counterstrike but with mods kind of thing, right? A custom Counterstrike
Like a Warcraft
game
3,
feel.
like Warcraft 3 mod or something.
Yeah, that's what a lot of us.
No, that's interesting.
Which is a mod we all miss. And
Oh yeah,
CSGO,
definitely.
right? Because it was
We
fun.
all love that one. Yeah.
And it feels like that. It's a bit of it's CS. We even talked about it, right? That it's like it's probably a really good casual game for the CS players also. So it's not CS all the time.
Yep.
But you still feel like you're playing, you're aiming, and then throwing, I don't know, drones and stuff, which you don't do in the CS, right? So it's I think I don't know if that makes sense, but at the core of a great game, I think is mechanics, right? How it feels. I remember this is we're jumping way back to a conversation we had earlier. I remember having that feeling when I don't know, were you a player?
Oh, what? Sorry.
Dota player.
Yeah. So I've been playing Dota with my girlfriend, like kind of like a game or two every night. So I've been getting back into it actually.
But you played the first Dota.
I played Dota All Stars. Yeah, I played Dota All Stars. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dota Warcraft.
Because what happened, I remember that feeling. Right, the first Dota was like a custom game of Warcraft 3, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, this is a game in itself. It was growing. And then they made Han, Heroes of New Earth. Mm-hmm. And that was the exact same feeling where it's like, that was a great game. Honestly, the mechanics, the way it played, also because Dota also was shit in the end, right? Because it wasn't made for it. The mechanics was so bad, right? And then they made Heroes of New Earth. And that's kind of the feeling you're getting here. It's like, holy God. It's like all the heroes that I used to play with, and it just feels smooth. It feels nice. And then they failed for other reasons because Dota 2 and Valve and stuff, and that's pretty hard to compete with, right? But this is probably not going to happen to Valorant. But anyways, my point is that that's sort of the feeling I have here. Also, it is like, oh, cool.
It's like it's like a new running shoe or like a new car.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know how to drive it, but it takes some getting used to. That's it's cool. I do like that about Valorant. Yeah, it just fits. It just fits if you played FPS games. And it makes a lot of sense. There's so much to learn about, like how the game's gonna look when people are good. Oh my God, I have no idea. The amount of skill combinations and stuff, and the fact that skills can go across the map, a lot of them, and the intelligence stuff. I mean, it's yet to be seen who will actually reign supreme. In terms of like the conversation I think is going to be most interesting is who's the best group of players in Valorant, right? Are the pros going to be comprised of former CS players, former Overwatch players, Paladins, like all of these other games? Who is going to be the best at the end of the day? Because I think right out the gate, because of how much you actually do kind of just walk around and how good you can be with just guns, Counter-Strike players just are owning because it feels, some people are comparing it to 1.6 because of the movement feels a little bit bouncy and slower. And so for Counter-Strike players, like easy, we know how to do this. You know, we're used to dying and having to wait for a minute to respawn. Like we know what that's like. We won't get nervous. But down the line, when people start getting better at the skills, Apex players, it also kind of feels like Apex in a weird way. And they have like the Reaper. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I personally think the Paladins players are probably the best.
The Paladins players would be top one in the world potentially. Yeah. Pretty good that you guys signed the lineup for the world championship. So I mean, wow, that's what a lucky stroke of luck there. That's great. Now
it's an interesting conversation.
The attention I think we kind of wrap up here. The CS team. You guys, this new team has been pretty sick, but like you guys just had a couple of bad series recently. I would bring that up. We just look at these like pro league standings. 2-0 versus Astralis, great start. Team Spirit 2-0 just to show that you're still consistent. Godsent, whatever, another win as long as you didn't drop a map. But then you lost the 0-2 to Vitality, 0-2 to Ents, 1-2 to Ents, and 1-2 to Fnatic. And some of those games weren't close. You guys are very up and down. Like the maps that you win, you stomp. The maps that you lose, you get stomped. What's the deal with Counter-Strike? What's the deal with your Counter-Strike roster right now? How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, I think generally really positive, right? Because I think if you just go back 6 months and look at NiP and Counter-Strike, I don't think a lot of people really took us that seriously on being able to shoot. And I remember, like we talked about it, but I think we saw some promise in Blast, the first tournament we had. And then also, I know it's online and everything. I think people can still agree that we came out shooting pretty hard in Pro League, and people are like, okay, wow, something is happening here. And that's 100% the work of the players and the threat, and the staff around the team. They've done a lot of work, a lot of training, and it's a good group of players, obviously, with a tremendous high skill ceiling, a lot of them. So I think that's the real positive, and we have a lot to build on. There's still a ghost, not a ghost, that's the wrong word, but maybe there's a virus around still of this choking thing, that when things get really tough sometimes, when the opposition hits us and when it really matters, then we choke sometimes, quite simply. Which is, you saw Astralis do it for a long time. Before
true.
they got really good, right? They had choking.
It's always good to be like Astralis.
Yeah. No, but a lot of teams have done. I'm not saying that we're going to be the new Astralis, right? But it's just it's a thing, right? And it's an actual thing, and you can see it really clearly also, that when it falls apart, it really falls apart. Some people ask a lot about if it's about map pool, etc. I think we're doing great work there. Obviously, we're a new team, so we need more and deeper map pools, more understanding of that. But that's just the test of time, I think. But if I could attest it to anything, I think we need to toughen a bit up when the going gets rough and we get bullied a bit on the server. Because
you got young players, man.
Yeah, that's sort of what happens, right?
And you lost Papa Forest, but honestly, you replaced Forest, but at the same time, I can't remember where this was, but I believe Threat talked about how it's like actually, like, because the players are so young, they're more responsive to feedback. Was that said in an interview somewhere? Yeah, could you talk about that a little bit? How things have changed now that you are a completely new roster?
Sure.
In a lot of ways.
I think the analogy I've used is maybe for those that care about football, is the Liverpool mentality or analogy. They had a really good team, Liverpool, but they used to have a player called Coutinho, which was above and beyond the biggest star that they had. He's really good, formidable player, no doubting that. Same as Forrest, right? Formidable player. Problem was sometimes that they had built such a new roster in the Liverpool squad, and the whole strategy literally evolved around, well, just give it to Coutinho, right? Because he's clearly the best. So you play around him all the time. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing here. Not that, even though I think he's still a great player, he's a great teammate, and it's not that outspoken in Counterstrike. But it sort of happens, that he drags the attention. He's the star player and all that stuff. And when you remove that star player, all of a sudden you tell Raz, you tell Plopsky, you tell Nork, and all the youngsters, right? The guys, this is it. Here we go. It's your moment to shine, right? You can tell them like Saul did it 1.5 years. He got the best player in the world. Just go knock yourself out. It's your time to shine. So the one thing is obviously the feedback that Bjorn is talking about, but it's also saying that sometimes it can lift the team, actually, which I think we've seen. That we maybe removed one of the greatest icons in the game, a great player, and we became a better team. Like, we literally play better, we shoot harder, because there's more space for some of the younger people now, right? That they can get into it, which I think is and that's happened with Liverpool, right? They're dominating the Premier League. So I think there's definitely elements of that where we can take the younger players and give them more. And then I think also we're doing a lot of work that people don't see, right? And really investing in how we train these players and mature them up in many ways, right? And they're working really hard on that part also. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Who doesn't know how to cook still on the team?
I don't know. I'm afraid to hang out.
That's gotta be part of it. That's gotta be part of it. Who's cooking for themselves in quarantine, and who's ordering in every night?
But do they know? We got a bunch of people living at home still, So Russ got a girlfriend and think, I don't know. Like, Plopsky lives at his parents, right? So he doesn't even cook.
Yeah. I wouldn't be. No, I'd be pretending not to know how to cook. I know that feel. Okay, well, that's great. I think I've asked you all the questions that I had written down. Dude, it's really good to talk to you again, Jonas.
Good, man.
Always a fun time. I think this would be very interesting for people who want to, again, learn like about that path from becoming from being in esports and then to like going out to try other things and coming back. I think that's a very interesting path. So it's cool that you came on to share it.
Absolutely.
One last question for you, Jonas, to wrap it up. Why should people buy NiP jerseys?
Why? because they're going to be worth a lot of money one day. You know?
Oh yeah, that's what you should do.
Take over the whole world.
Self-interest. That's smart. I like that. You can make money by NiP jerseys. All right. Thank you so much, Jonas, for being on. Hopefully we can do this again soon.
Thanks. Have a good night, man. Bye.
Take care.